Ladies and gentlemen, Investor Talk is back with a mining flash, and I welcome there Robert Archer, CEO of Pinnacle Silver and Gold. Bob, great to see you. There was a pretty interesting press release, but first, of course, good to see you again.
Well, likewise, Jan. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure, Bob. And the news release we are talking about is, or it was about metallurgical results, and those were really encouraging. Let me show the release first. Here it is, Bob, and we read here more than 97% gold recovery, and these are really outstanding results. Please comment on the key findings of this press release.
Yeah, we were really pleased with the results of this round of testing. Our first round of metallurgical testing that we did, late last year and into early this year, really only focused on one of the three existing mines, Pinos Cuates, on the main Dos de Mayo vein, and we took three samples, from that mine, and we got an average of 95% recovery, which we thought even that was very good, but we needed to broaden the scope of the testing because obviously that was just on the one mine to give us some indication of what to expect. So we did that. In this round, we took 7 samples, 5 from the 3 mines on the Dos de Mayo vein, and then sampled or assayed those individually and did some mineralogical work on those individually, but then composited those 5 into one sample to continue with the testing. But in addition to that, we took a sample from the Capulin vein, which was 200 meters away, and the Estrella vein, which is 500 meters away. So these veins are completely separate, has slightly different geological characteristics. And so, we wanted to get a little bit of a sense as to what to expect from those veins as well. So the fact that those other 2 veins came back with very similar gold recoveries. The composited sample from the five samples on Dos de Mayo came back with that 97.8, but Estrella came back at 97.6, and Capulin came back at 97.4. So, considering these are hundreds of meters away, we were very, very pleased to see very similar recovery rates, because when we get to actually mining, it's important to know if you can blend the ore from different veins at the plant. It makes for much more efficient, processing and scheduling. If they came back, if they had totally different characteristics and one was much higher or lower than the other ones, then, potentially you would have to batch process the ore from the different veins, which requires scheduling issues and so on. So it was great to see that consistency. Another thing that we learned was that by going to a finer grind of the ore, the recoveries increased by about 2.5%. So from the 95% we had before to the 97 point or 97.5, call it. So that's important as well. So the incremental cost, increasing cost of grinding finer is outweighed by the extra value that you would achieve with that extra 2.5% recovery. So that's that was important to understand that as well from the gold standpoint. And we learned that from the mineralogical testing that we did when we sent the individual samples to the lab in Chile for the TEMA analysis. So we found that the gold grains were almost all less than 50 microns, and so that's why we ground it finer. The silver, on the other hand, was typically less than 80 microns, so also quite fine grained. But the other thing we found on the silver was that it occurs with gold as electrum, which is is a natural alloy of gold and silver. And it also occurs as silver sulfides. So acanthite and argentite, which are silver sulfides, but then another mineral called aguilarite, which is a silver selenium sulfide. Not quite as common, but the fact that a lot of the silver is tied up in sulfides means it's typically more amenable to flotation process of recovery as opposed to leaching. And for that reason, silver doesn't always leach as well as gold because of that complex mineralogy. So, we didn't expect the silver recoveries to be as high, and they're not. And because of that variable mineralogy, we found in the different samples that the silver recoveries, were more variable, from about 55% up to 80%. I think overall, you will probably end up averaging somewhere around 70% for silver, but we still have a little bit more test work to do on that, to determine how best to maximize the silver recoveries. But overall, we were extremely pleased with the results of the testing.
I can imagine that. And in your press release, we also read that you found out that a gravitation circuit wouldn't be of any use because it doesn't increase the recovery, because you are close to 100% already. How much will you increase? It's nearly impossible. But such a circuit is always a question of costs, and you can completely leave this away, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whenever you're dealing with free gold, which in this case, there is some free visible gold. We've seen it in the samples from the mines, so we know it exists. And the rest of the gold is tied up in the electrum. But we wanted to see how much of that free gold could be recovered, in a gravity circuit, and then leaching the rest. But it really didn't improve things at all. Probably because the gold is so fine. That gravity is really not as effective in a case like that. It works well if you have coarse gold, but for very fine gold, sometimes the gold will just float off the shaking table, and you don't recover it in the gravity circuit. So overall, it didn't improve the recoveries, and so we can basically eliminate that as a potential addition, to the circuit, which, a gravity circuit wouldn't be hugely expensive, but, if you can save $50,000 or $100,000 by not having to do it, then that's great. Yeah, it's nice to know that up front. So, these are the sorts of things that you learn through the metallurgical testing as we improve our knowledge of, the flow sheet and what the specifications for the type of equipment that we need to buy and install, and all that sort of thing. So these are really important questions to answer up front.
A final question for today, Bob. We are waiting for drill results. How is your drill campaign ongoing? At which hole are you right now? And when can we expect the first results?
Well, I just spent 3 days on the project. I just got back a couple of nights ago, and the contractor did have some startup problems initially, as is common with a lot of drilling programs, and so that there's, whether it's mechanical, logistical, just little things that they need to sort of find their stride, so to speak, and get going. So they've done that now, and things will move a little quicker from this point going forward. But having said that, they are just wrapping up the 19th hole. We had planned just over 100 holes, and a few of the holes that we drilled initially, just for logistical reasons, are a few of the deeper holes. So we've completed about 20% of the number of holes, but we've drilled probably about 25% in terms of the number of meters. Things will progress, but in terms of results, we only have results from the first 2 holes so far. So in drilling over 100 holes, we're not going to be releasing them 2 at a time. I need to, because of the nature of the drilling, a lot of the holes are going to be very closely spaced and they're drilled at different angles. And so, we need to calculate what the estimated true width will be on the intercepts and then put that all into proper context because we're drilling underground and drilling on the mineralized zone. As I say, some of these holes are only going to be like 10 meters apart. And the idea is to get a feel for the overall grade and size and shape of the mineralized zones. So, just releasing a few holes at a time doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. We need to provide proper context for these. And so, for that reason, we'll be waiting for more results in order to be able to do that. And so that when we release these, we will be able to provide that context so that it's not just about a bunch of numbers, certain grade over so many meters, on individual holes, that will be meaningless for what we're doing right now. So we have to sort of package these properly in order to, provide those results in a meaningful fashion. So we'll see how it comes together. I can't say exactly when that's going to happen or when we'll release those, but we will release the results when appropriate and as soon as we can. I mean, we're not trying to hold anything back, but it needs to make proper sense.
That makes absolutely sense. I thank you for the update. Wish you a good weekend and looking forward to your results whenever they come out. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Jan.
Thanks.